Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. What a courageous group of Texans this is at this hour of the morning. We're glad to see you here. I'm Ed Jeredjian. I'm the director of the Baker Institute, and we're delighted to host you this morning. We're going to have a very interesting, I know, moderated discussion with the mayor and Evan Smith, who is well known to all of you. He's the CEO and editor-in-chief of the Texas Tribune. Most of us know for 18 years he was at the Texas Monthly until 2009. Present editor-in-chief, and the Texas Monthly received many national awards under his leadership. Our guest of honor, of course, is the mayor of Houston. As you all know, she's an accomplished businesswoman and a distinguished public servant, the second woman to be elected as mayor of Houston. And I'm also proud to say that she's the first graduate of Rice University to be elected mayor. Who says we don't have a leadership program here? She's a member of Jones College. Our speaker, she graduated from Rice in 1978 with a degree in sociology and anthropology, and she continues to be actively involved in the life of the campus. So it's no surprise that her Rice education helped her begin a prestigious career in the private sector, where she worked for 18 years with Mosbacher Energy Company, and prior to becoming mayor, she served as city controller and a member of the city council. In December of 2009, she was elected mayor with 53.6% of the vote in a runoff and was sworn in on January 4, 2010. Now responsible for our nation's fourth largest city, she has led several initiatives to cut costs and balance the budget, obviously a critical municipal, state, national, and global issue. Since its inception, I'd just like to comment that the Baker Institute has worked closely with the City of Houston on various projects. We've worked with the mayor's predecessors, we're working with her, and we've assessed the city's ability to respond to acts of terrorism. We supported Ellington Field during the base realignment and closure process, and Ambassador Arthur Schechter and I chaired the mayor's task force on international travelers when Bill White was mayor. And our task force succeeded in its mission of ensuring a safe but smooth travel through our city's major transit points. And as most of you probably know, Bush International Airport is now recognized nationally as a model airport. So we look forward to further collaborations with the city. I just want to say we're here to serve you and the city, Mayor. And I would now like to turn it over to Evan for our discussion with the mayor.
Ambassador, thank you very much. An honor to be here. An honor to be here at the Baker Institute. Looking forward to a long relationship with the Baker Institute and the Tribune. Thank you very much. I want to thank our friends at NRG, Energy Vehicle Services, for their generosity in making today possible as well. Mayor, an honor to be with you again. Very nice to see you.
Good to see you.
I have a lot of substance to talk to you about, but first I want a good Rice story for the benefit of this group. You are an alumnus, as the ambassador said. You have fond memories. Of course, you only can have fond memories if you're on campus.
I have a little bit of both, actually.
Well, tell us one good Rice story.
I don't have any really hysterical Rice story. It's been a very long time, and
nothing involving funny hats or anything from the time that you were here as a student.
I came to Rice in 1974, which was right at the end of the streaking craze. So
wow, this went in a different direction than I thought, actually.
I did not, but that was the early years of the Baker 13 and the shaving cream. Nude bodies with shaving cream streaking the campus, and so that was probably the highlight of my freshman year.
Well, I'm looking at Terry Langford from the Chronicle here. Please write down, the mayor did not streak as a student. I do not want to see that in the paper tomorrow, actually. Well, it's really, wow, I didn't expect that to go in that direction. You have now been mayor for, you're in your 11th month as mayor. How's it gone? And more to the point, how is it different than you expected it would be? Of course, you served in office for a long time before becoming mayor, but it's always different when you get the job.
Because of my tenure as city council member and controller, I'm arguably the most prepared or experienced person to take office as mayor. And in the day-to-day running of the city of Houston, that is absolutely true. But there are things that happen that no one can anticipate. And there have been some significant challenges. The BP Horizon explosion, for example, we had no direct impact in Houston from the spill, but certainly we got caught in the backwash because of the companies that are headquartered here and the amount of our economy that is tied to the oil and gas industry. The president deciding to go in a fundamentally different direction at NASA with manned spaceflight,
right,
or human spaceflight, was a surprise and caused a great deal of time and energy to be spent on trying to unwind some of that. And I noticed that one of my council members is out there, Councilmember Sullivan, who worked with me on that. He represents that area. The fact that Houston's economy was stronger than that of the rest of the United States has been a blessing, but our economy has not bounced back as fast as we had anticipated, again,
right,
for things like the BP Horizon. So those are just, thank goodness we didn't have a hurricane. That would have been the trifecta.
Right, the
that would
last,
have been, yeah.
I'm done at that point, right. But being mayor, in fact, you observed the mayoralty very close up as comptroller and as a member of the council, but being mayor is always different than wanting to be mayor or watching someone else be mayor.
Absolutely, and in a strong mayor system,
right,
there is more pressure on the mayor to perform, and if the mayor is not a good manager, the wheels come off very quickly. And I spent, my first task was assembling a team that could help me run the city. And I've been criticized somewhat on that I put together a team of insiders. There's not a lot of diversity on my leadership team. Valid criticism. I picked people who knew how to move the levers of power within the city and just make the city run, make the trains run on time.
Mm-hmm. And that was a priority for you. The important thing was get good government and let the other stuff take care of itself.
Yes.
When we visited in Austin in March, you observed that after just a few months in the job, one thing you noticed is that you were no longer anonymous. That when you were a comptroller, even though you've been elected by many people in the city, and when you were a council member, you could have a life, you go out in the city and people didn't necessarily know you, now they're on you. I suspect that's more the case now than it was even then.
I don't know whether it was before or after Easter that you interviewed me, but I had not taken a single day off until Easter Sunday, and I said, okay, I'm not going to go to church, I'm not going to do anything public. We're just going to go for a power walk. A couple of friends and I got together and we're walking along Buffalo Bayou, which is one of my favorite walking routes, and I've really missed it. And it's 7 o'clock in the morning and I've got my sweats on and my ball cap and my glasses.
You don't look very mayorly, actually.
12
right?
people, and every one of them said, is that mayor? And I'm toast.
There's no escaping.
I'm going to have to get up and get dressed every day and look like I'm ready to face the world.
You mind that very much?
Yes.
You do, yeah. You don't want to think about that answer before you just write?
No.
I guess there's something about being in public office that makes you public property, right?
Yeah.
But
well, and I have a difficult time setting boundaries. Literally, I could spend 7 days a week from 7 in the morning till 10 at night just going places.
Yep.
And it's very tempting to do, and everybody wants me to go places, and you can't get anything done.
You're always the mayor, 24 hours a day, right? People see you as the mayor.
Well, yeah.
Another interesting aspect, I think, of your time as the mayor this first year is that you happened to be mayor in the first year when your predecessor was running for governor. Difficult.
I like and respect Bill White, and he did a good job running the city of Houston, but I had legitimate policy differences with him as controller, and it was a good lesson to me because I said exactly the same thing as mayor that I had said as controller, but it had a very different impact.
Viewed very differently, scrutinized by everybody very carefully.
I did not appreciate seeing pictures of myself in Rick Perry campaign ads.
Well, suddenly you were the mayor of a sanctuary city that was run poorly and the economy was bad and you had terrible problems with doing business with companies you shouldn't have done business with and all that.
Well, and I would make a statement about changing something, a policy that the city had, or going in a different direction, and Rick Perry would put out a campaign press release, and Bill White's people would call and complain.
Call you to complain.
Yes, and just
I figured they called the Perry campaign to complain, but they called you to complain.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, but in fact, as you viewed it, you were just doing your job as mayor, right? You had to run the city outside the parameters of a governor's race.
Yes. Although I probably should have been a little more politic in some of the things I said.
So that, I was going to say, what would you have done differently? You would have done that differently. You might have not said
I would
as much,
not
or
have changed what I had done, but
fundamental beliefs about what happened prior to you being mayor were the same.
Right.
In fact.
And truly, it didn't occur to me that saying the same thing in almost the same words that I said as controller as now that I was in the mayor's seat would have that kind of impact.
Another thing you said to me back in the spring when we visited together was that as you anticipated the campaign over the many months ahead, that the governor and his campaign should not mess with Houston. That you very specifically said that Houston should not become a casualty of this campaign. Did it become one?
Not as much as I had feared, but yes, it did. And the fact that I had to weigh everything I said in trying to talk to the public, and I tend to be fairly direct in what I say, and that I had to kind of muzzle myself a little bit and be aware of what was happening in the governor's race was a problem. I don't think, I mean, it did become a political football, but not to the extent it could have. I don't, you know, I do believe that Rick Perry wants to govern, not just win the race, or wanted to govern, not just win the race. And so it
at the end,
worse.
on November 3rd, he would be the governor of a state that would include Houston.
Yes.
And in theory, he'd still want to be the person who ultimately
Right.
led that. Did you recognize the city of Houston that was displayed or depicted in the campaign by the time it was over? Did you recognize it?
Well, I will also say that I'm going to say I don't watch TV. It's not that I disdain watching TV, I just don't watch TV because I'm never at home to watch TV. So I didn't see the ads unless someone pointed them out to me.
Right.
So I don't really know how it was depicted.
But you're aware, for
in the rest of
instance,
the
that
state.
one of the things that the governor's campaign did do late in the campaign was to assert that the city is a sanctuary city and trot people out to make the argument.
That argument has been raised over and over again. It was an argument that was raised in my campaign for mayor. It's been something that's come up, and unfortunately, that's part of the dialogue now. I think that's a complete waste of time to argue whether we're a sanctuary city. The issue is, what do we do with the undocumented residents of our city? How do we treat them, and how do we deal with the criminal element that is part of that undocumented population? And my policies are almost identical to Bill White's. I don't consider us a sanctuary city, but I don't really care if people say that we're a sanctuary city. We have a policy. That policy is supported by the leadership in the police department. We are going to continue that policy. If you're living here peacefully, we want you to pay taxes, to contribute to our economy, to call the police if you need the police, to report crimes if you see crimes, and if you break the law, we're going to arrest you. We're going to run you through the Secure Communities program. We're going to run you through the 287G program. And after you've served your time, we're going to turn you over to ICE for whatever they want to do with you. Unfortunately, in midsummer, there was a 14-year-old girl murdered here in Houston by someone who had come over illegally, been arrested, tried, convicted, gone to jail, turned over to ICE when he got out, deported, come back, broken the law, been arrested, tried, convicted, gone to jail, deported, come back a third time. That's the problem. Not that we're here, not that they're here, not that we don't stop people on the street. It's that we do our job perfectly, and they keep coming back.
Who is the they not doing their job in that case?
If you're gonna expect us to police efficiently, you've got to close the borders to somebody that has been deported twice already for breaking the law here.
So you and the governor actually have that in common.
Absolutely.
You both believe that the government is not doing, the federal government is not doing a sufficient job of
And Bill
protecting
White
our
had
border.
that same position as well. I don't want to spend the whole time talking about my predecessor in the mayor's office, but it's a very practical and pragmatic position. And the two candidates for governor, the primary candidates for governor, White and Perry, had the same basic position. They just talked about it differently.
Right. I know you don't want to talk about your predecessor, and I don't either, but I do have to ask you one more thing. Why did Mayor White not perform better in Harris County or in some of the legislative districts in this area than he did? We all thought, I think we all assumed that Mayor White would sweep Houston, and then that would be one of the things that would allow him to be competitive in this race. In fact, he seemed to barely win this area that he had governed for 6 years.
He did win the counties that house the major cities in Texas. Right. You know, Houston and San Antonio and Austin and Fort Worth. It was just the tide changed. And I don't know that it had anything to do with individual candidates.
You think it was the tsunami that got him? Yeah. And even in his own hometown?
Yes.
That was what it was?
Yes.
Okay. Let me stay with immigration for a second. So, you know, we know that Houston is the largest city in Texas. We also know that the immigrant population in Houston is quite significant compared to other cities in Texas as well. Leave aside what's wrong with the world as far as not policing our borders sufficiently. What should, from the standpoint of the city of Houston, what should the appropriate policy be toward the immigrant population, either from a criminal justice standpoint or any other aspect of it you want to talk about?
Well, I think we have the appropriate policy from a criminal justice standpoint. Again, that we need to recognize a fact on the ground. We have people here who have been here for generations and or decades, and they're living here peacefully. They contribute to our economy, and we police them just as we do anyone else here. But there has to be a path to citizenship. You have to secure your borders.
It's as simple as that.
As simple as that.
But of course, it's not as simple as that, because the tasks that you're talking about performing are themselves quite complicated and require a lot of you and of the state and of the federal government.
But
and they're expensive tasks.
It is not the responsibility of cities to do federal immigration enforcement. We have enough to say grace over, and I do have fundamental concerns about an Arizona-style law in Texas, and I'm sure that's going to be discussed when the legislature gets back together. Well,
that was my next question.
I think the bills are already being filed.
In fact, by a woman who has R-Houston next to her name, in fact. But in fact, the Arizona, so you're on the record not supporting any such, because it would have an impact on not just every city, but specifically your city, if that in fact happened.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and we work very hard to convince our population that police officers may be the authority figures, they may be there to arrest you, but they're also there to help. And if they become immigration enforcers, there's a very significant portion of people who live in this area who will never believe that. And you cut yourself off from good sources of information, you limit your ability to do basic policing if you do immigration enforcing.
You're sympathetic to the argument that what that does is cause people just not to want to deal with the police.
Not to want to deal with police.
For fear.
And the fact that Houston is a hub for international narco-trafficking. We know that. For human trafficking, we depend on cooperation and tips from citizens to help us deal with that.
Right. Immigration is obviously one issue that's going to be quite in discussion during the legislative session coming up, as you say, but maybe the most important issue is going to be the budget. We know that the budget shortfall in the state is going to be somewhere between, on the most optimistic end, 12, 13 billion, possibly as much as 25, or I even heard yesterday, $28 billion. Certainly some of this is going to be felt here in Houston.
Well, that's one area that I think that Governor Perry had a little bit of temporary amnesia during the campaign as to how bad the
talk a little
budget situation in the
talk
state
about
is.
that, but I want to understand specifically where that piece of public policy is going to hit you hardest when you know that the budget shortfall is that hard.
Budget shortfalls roll downhill. The state, the easiest thing for the state to do is push out to the cities things that whatever they can avoid to punt to the cities. And the buck always stops at the cities.
You're expecting that going into this session. So in the 03 session, there was so-called cost shifting that happened, where the state would say, well, one of the ways we're going to cut the budget is we're going to stop paying for stuff. And we're going to let it roll downstream. And so if the school districts or the hospital districts decide to raise taxes, that's on them. And if they decide to cut, that's on them, but we're out of this. you're expecting a similar scenario this time?
I'm expecting a similar scenario this time, absolutely. And when I say the buck ultimately stops at the city, it's what are you willing to put up with? Are we willing to step over homeless people on the street? Are we willing to see the, we already have a third of our population down here that has no health coverage. Are we willing to see the hospital district cut back even more? Are we willing to see, if there's this wave of anti-immigrant sentiment, a hard line that says we don't treat someone who can't prove that they're treat medically someone who can't prove that they're here legally, and what that does for our workforce, what that does for chronic communicable diseases, and how they embed in our population. There's a whole range of problems that could occur.
But as a practical matter.
But education is another area
right.
where you're going to see problems. I spent the last month of this recent election focused on 3 city propositions. And one of those, Proposition 1, so-called Renew Houston, is a drainage fee for the city of Houston, and my bottom line is that I expect it to be applied to everyone across the city, commercial, residential, and institutional property owners across the city. That puts me directly in conflict with the school districts. They're going to get hit by a drainage fee. I'm sure they're also going to get hit by cutbacks at the state level. They are going to be squeezed. Well,
in fact, education and health and human services are by far the largest parts of the state budget. They are therefore the largest targets when time comes to cut. So as a practical matter, what do you do about that? So let's assume that what we're talking about does in fact occur and these big cuts occur. You as the mayor are going to be forced to lead a conversation across the city about whether we raise taxes. Are you taking that off the table in the event of greater costs now suddenly rolling downstream to you?
Well, I'm taking it off the table for 2011. But we'll see. Assuming that I'm reelected, these 2-year terms are hell.
Right. Well, the minute you get elected, you got to run again.
So I'll be on the ballot next year.
Right.
But
I wouldn't talk about taxes before you run again. Just spring it on them afterwards, actually.
Yeah, there you go.
Right.
But no, we'll have an opportunity to see what happens in the legislative session.
But importantly, you are saying you would keep open the possibility of raising taxes depending upon what the result of the budget discussions at the state level are.
It is all you don't go into battle deciding you're going to leave one of your big weapons behind. You may never use that weapon, and you don't want to use that weapon.
I mean, there's a tradition at the state level of people saying, I swear off the possibility, but you're not swearing off the possibility.
No.
And that's just a practical thing as mayor.
That's just practical, and it's easy politically to say, oh, well, I'm never going to raise taxes. This is about governing, and this is about what are the needs of my city. I don't foresee raising taxes next year, but I also wouldn't have foreseen the world financial meltdown.
Alas, yeah. Hard to see around corners.
Right.
What about the federal budget? Obviously, we're in a situation where we have a terrible deficit as a country, and so much of what happens at the federal level does impact disproportionately the biggest cities, of which Houston is now 4th in population. So you would think that you would be hit pretty hard by the problems at the federal level.
Well, and I think we have, unfortunately, an administration that doesn't understand cities, fundamentally, the needs of cities. And that's not just my opinion. It's fairly universally held by the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And
many of those mayors who come from the same party as the president have that position.
As I do. I mean, but the U.S. Conference of Mayors is the larger cities in America, over 100,000 population, and which is a big jump between a city of 100,000 to a city of 2 million or more. But what I hear is fairly consistent, that they don't get what cities need. They don't understand how to fund, to get money down to cities. And then, of course, considering how Texas has been over the last year, and actually more like a year and a half in terms of the governor's race. Money coming into Texas designed for the cities in Texas tends to get stuck in Austin. And as big city mayors, we are lobbying hard for direct funding to our cities. We feel we know best how to spend the money on the ground. We don't need it filtered in Austin, and we certainly don't need it filtered in Washington.
But let me come back to the state piece of this in a second. At the federal level, you said, we in the U.S. Conference of Mayors believe, by and large, that this administration, this president, do not understand cities.
Right.
What would you like them to understand in Washington that they don't understand? And what would you tell the president if you could, if you were sitting right here? This is what you should do for the cities of this country.
Well, there's several things. One is in the event of a disaster, for example, not every tiny town in Texas can take direct money after a Hurricane Ike, for example. But a Houston can, a Galveston can. Don't add a layer of complexity. Don't add allow the state to hold money or skim some of that money for administration costs while we're desperately waiting down here to provide services to people on the ground. We're getting better about that after Katrina, but it's still not fixed.
Unclog the pipe.
Unclog the pipeline. We're even money gets. We have a very effective Council of Governments down here, so-called COG, Houston Galveston Area Council. It's a large 8-county region. I represent the city on that Council of Governments. Galveston lost its public housing. You have county judges from counties far away from the coast who have no public housing and can't understand why Galveston needs to replace its public housing, and the money gets plugged up again. I would ask that there be more opportunities for programs like community development block grants, CDBG funds coming down to the state. We're a donor city and a donor state. We send more money to Washington than we ever get back. So what fraction I get back, give me the maximum flexibility to spend it on the ground here in ways that benefit my city, because my city is different from Dallas, my city is different from Galveston, my city is different from New Orleans and others. Each city is unique, and I absolutely believe that I'm the best person, and council, we on the ground, know where to put that money.
You alluded to the way the governor's race was conducted, and specifically the governor's point of view about the state-federal relationship and the degree to which we are willing to walk away from federal money that have strings attached. You don't share the governor's point of view necessarily on that subject.
If someone's going to give you money, there are almost always strings attached. If my mother were to loan me money, she'd expect me to pay that money back, or she'd expect it to be spent in a certain way.
Well, she's your mother. I mean, she might actually not be that.
No, my mother would expect it to.
I don't know your mother, so actually that's okay.
And so why should we? You follow the rules. I tackled Metro when I first came into office. That was another. I knew there were problems over there. I didn't know the extent of problems in Metro, but we now have $900 million that is in jeopardy for the expansion of our light rail lines because we didn't follow not some interpretation of federal law, but a very clear federal mandate of Build America, Buy America. Mm-hmm. And Metro was just trying to wire around it. If you apply for money and you understand what the rules are, follow the rules. We've had that problem in the city of Houston in our Housing and Community Development Department, where we have had to send millions of dollars back in HUD money because we have violated policies. And often it was, and this is one area where I did just disagree with Mayor White. Sometimes we may know how to do it better, but you try to change the rules. Don't just violate the rules and then get pop later.
Don't ask for forgiveness rather than permission in that case. But like the race for the top money, for instance, which we discussed in the spring, that was however much, hundreds of millions of dollars of education funding that would have come to the state. Governor made a very public point of turning that down, saying there are strings attached. You would have taken that money.
Yes.
Despite the strings.
Right.
Yeah, because?
We are a donor city and a donor state, and
we
need the money.
Right.
And why should I send my tax dollars to Washington to see them go to other states when they're desperately needed here? I'll figure out some way to spend it within the parameters in an effective way.
Okay. We only have a couple minutes left. I want to ask, you mentioned Renew Houston, and in a general sense, you have over the last year made a public point of saying Houston should be the greenest big city in the country. This is an important thing to you. Mm-hmm. It seems incongruous to people who don't know Houston and don't know you to think that Houston could be green. Those don't seem like two words that would be in the same sentence. And yet this is a place where a lot of the energy about electric cars is located. You've got a vegetable garden that is the city's vegetable garden sustainability director. You've made a lot of moves personally as mayor to go in this direction. I really want to know about your thinking on this and how you think it's possible.
Well, there are a lot of folks who are still scratching their heads and saying that Houston elected a lesbian mayor. Houston is a place where if you have a good idea, it's the best place in the world to test that idea. Houston is a place where you can make things happen. And the fact that I may despair at times that we tear down anything that gets a little age on it, because I am a preservationist and I want to preserve Houston's history, but the fact that we are looking for the next best thing, that we are an entrepreneurial, energetic city, means that you can make change and move into the future quickly. We are the largest municipal purchaser of wind power in the United States. That's thanks to Bill White. We are, I believe, the fourth largest purchaser of wind power, public or private, in the United States. We are rapidly moving toward being a place where green vehicles are, particularly electric vehicles, can be accessibly and easily recharged. We have a green office challenge going on right now with many of the major corporations in the city of Houston competing. We were able to secure some grant funds to assist in our green office challenge. We are the fastest growing city for LEED certified buildings. All we're doing as an administration is raising the issue, providing some incentives, convening, putting people together. The marketplace is taking off in that, and that's part of the culture of Houston.
But your model, first of all, the city is modeling behavior for
Absolutely.
its residents. And the second thing I would observe is that often when you attempt to turn a big city like Houston into a green city, it is the business community that first and foremost says, wait a minute, that sounds like a lot of new regulations.
I don't understand the business community here in Houston, and we're not doing it with regulations. We're doing it, first, we are leading by example. Right. The city has greened its buildings, but something as simple as there are 2,300 signalized intersections in the city of Houston, traffic signals, the kind that people want to run red lights.
Yeah, I was about to say they'll suddenly be free of cameras, actually, as I understand it.
2,300 intersections, only 50 that had cameras, and we still are taking in $10 million a year.
Yeah,
Kind of
I was going to
scary,
say, how much money are you not going to get now? $10 million?
But we got a grant and worked a program to replace the incandescent bulbs in all of those traffic signals in all of those intersections. And we did it with looking at the ROI in terms of electricity savings. Had a very good ROI on electricity savings. Then we discovered, after we had embarked on the program, that the LED lights last 7 times as long as the incandescent lights. So not only were we saving money on electricity, we are saving money on the human cost of going out there and replacing those bulbs. And so going green often makes financial sense. And so part of the message to the business community is doing your homework, making sure that you can lay out the financial case in addition to we're saving the planet. Because Houston is always about the bottom line.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think, Mayor, we're at a time for our portion of this. You're a good sport. I appreciate you taking the time to sit with us and talk. Let's please give the Mayor of Houston a hand for her time. Now, thank you, Mayor. I think, the Mayor, you've agreed to take a couple of questions before you exit the building. The Mayor has been kind enough to say she'd take questions. Ambassador Untermeyer, I'm happy to give you the first question, sir.
It's almost cliche to say that the Mayor of Houston thank you. It's almost cliche to say that the Mayor of Houston is the most powerful mayor in the country. You've observed that job for so long, and now you're in it. Is that true in practical terms? As mayor, do you have the power to cause things to happen?
You feel powerful?
It depends on what day it is and whether there's a council member in the room.
Okay.
Yes, I mean the big cities in America all have strong mayor systems with tremendous individual power, but it's still about. I do have a board of directors, the Houston City Council, and I have constituents that have to come along with me, and so I have tremendous power to, as I said, make the trains run on time and actually do the nuts and bolts of making the city work, but launching off in new directions, big initiatives, there has to be collaboration there, and there has to be buy-in from the public.
That's a question here in the front, and I think we're going to
all 21,000 city employees do work for me. All the department directors are direct hires, and I've replaced about 2/3 of them in my 10 months of office.
Good morning, Mayor. I'm Dr. Afzal Firdaus, representing Pakistani community. We supported you. We are happy that you are the mayor of our town. Do you have any projects or any programs to assimilate the immigrants into the mainstream?
The city has long had a strong program of immigrant assistance. I have a director of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs for the city of Houston, Benito Juarez. We work with a range, again, we're not providing the service, we are more of a convener and troubleshooter role. In fact, next week, I believe, is Citizenship Week for the city of Houston, and my Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs, along with many of the social service agencies that work with various immigrant and refugee populations. There's a range of events across the city of Houston to draw attention to the huge diversity that we have here and the number of different immigrant groups we have in the city of Houston. A related issue, not directly what you asked, I have spent a good bit of my time since becoming mayor on refocusing the city on the needs of our international community here. We are one of the most diverse international cities in America, and again, the rest of America doesn't recognize that, how international Houston is, the 92 foreign consulates, the fact that if there's a language of business spoken in the world, it's spoken in Houston. We need to be the go-to community for international business people wanting to do business with the United States, and I have upgraded my Office of Economic Development and International Affairs, and we are working hard to provide not just for the needs of the immigrant and refugee communities, but also the international business community to link those communities together.
Well, we are there to help you. Thank you.
Gentleman in the middle right there.
Good morning, and thanks for the opportunity to ask a question. My question pertained to what initiatives were previously planned to be funded by the red light camera program, and how will the funding mechanisms be now adjusted accordingly?
Good question. What's going to happen?
The red light money stayed in the police department. It went right back into traffic enforcement. Now, when we first put in red light cameras, we don't use it for general fund. It did stay. It has always been in traffic enforcement. But when the state of Texas saw how lucrative those cameras were, they demanded half of the net. And so half of it has been going to the state of Texas to be reprogrammed for trauma care in Houston. So
that's going to be lost as well.
That's going to be lost. Bentab, Memorial Hermann, their trauma care centers will lose money from it as well. But for us, it was in the police department. We're going to have that. It's a $10 million hole in the police budget that we're going to have to figure out what to do.
What do you think?
Directly in traffic
What do you
enforcement.
think happened there? I mean, nothing you're describing sounds like the sort of things that the mood out in the world would be rail. I mean, there's a lot to rail against this election cycle. This doesn't sound like the government on your back.
This is a year if you put mom and apple pie and said the government was in charge of it.
Motherhood would have lost on the ballot, actually.
Yeah, I really
this
think.
year.
Because I had conversations
Unless
with
motherhood
people.
had been a Republican, motherhood might have won then, actually. That was for Alan Blakemore.
I had conversations with people in groups like this, and I would say, does everybody have a driver's license? Yes, everybody. Do you know you're not supposed to run the red light? Yeah, I know I'm not supposed to run a red light. Why do you not run red lights? Because it's dangerous. And do you think that I, as a mayor of a city, that we should be able to do traffic enforcement? Absolutely, should be able to do traffic enforcement. Well, if I can take a police officer and put that police officer on patrol and stick a camera there to do traffic enforcement, that's much more efficient. Yes. So do you support red light cameras or not? No.
No.
And it's just, the logic goes right off the table.
Well, it was a weird year, let's just say. We have time maybe for 2 more questions, Tanya, for the mayor. You have a rare opportunity to have a direct conversation with your mayor. Ma'am. We may have just numbed them all to sleep, actually, since it's so early.
Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning.
I know we are part of the C70 program for the greening of Houston, one of the 70 cities around the world that you participate in, or Bill White, I guess, put the program into motion. And I know as part of that program, we actually have looked at the assets of the city and the carbon footprint associated with that. But is there any program that you're envisioning to actually manage the carbon of the city of Houston, the rest of us?
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. I am focused on greening the city of Houston, the city proper. We have retrofitted our buildings. We have, as you know, we're a big purchaser of wind power. We are moving to solar, where we're going to be experimenting with green roofs. One of the things that I did is I hired a sustainability director for the city of Houston to both seek out grants to help us do this, but also oversee programs like our Green Office Challenge and to generate ideas for Houstonians to get more engaged. We're about to launch, as I mentioned earlier, a green car initiative. We're going to be one of the first municipal purchasers of the Nissan Leaf when it comes out, leading by example. So we are managing the city's carbon footprint as best we can. I'm not sure about putting that into a larger context. You already know my sustainability director. And I personally, in terms of the greening of Houston, we planted those victory gardens at City Hall, the container gardens. I've learned not to call them pot gardens. There's too much, but
yeah, this
container
is
gardens.
Not cool.
No, the container gardens. Because if we can grow container gardens in the middle of a sidewalk in downtown Houston, you can grow anything in Houston. And I don't want greening Houston to just be something that the government does. I want people to get excited about the idea of, yes, I can have my own container garden, I can grow my own food or flowers or whatever. And as one of the, if you're asking what I want my legacy to be, I want, yes, absolutely green Houston, but I want a continuous trail network along our biosystems where you can get on a trail and follow any of the bios into town, across town, back out of town. We have this wonderful necklace of interlaced bios that ought to be a linear park system for the city of Houston that right now we need to, we have individual jewels, but we need to string them. And that will do a lot to green Houston, but I've got to get Houstonians thinking outdoors. We tend to seal ourselves into our air-conditioned bubbles, and we've got to get people outside. Hot. It is hot. But I love to talk about the fact that where Houston is and how it got here. Houston was founded in August.
Founders with a sense of humor.
Yes. Founders with a sense of humor, that's a whole nother story, but people came and they stayed.
Right.
And the fact that we have become the city, arguably, clearly our growth has been post-World War II and the invention of air conditioning, but this was a major American city for a very long time, and built in conditions that we find impossible. Houstonians are tough. We just need to remind ourselves that this is a great climate 10 months out of the year, and we need to get outside and enjoy it. And so I'm trying to do things to bring people outside.
I like that.
And then they see those parks and they see those trails, and they're going to believe that they can't do without them.
Well, I'm going to just choose to end on that upbeat note, a positive view of what the city should see it for itself. So, Mayor, you've been really kind to give us so much time this morning. We really appreciate it. Let's give the mayor another hand. Thank you so much. Mayor, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.